Hello, my name is Sam,
Hi, I'm Kerri.
and we're the Marriage Guides, and we are just, both of us are marriage and family therapists, and we sometimes will have conversations about things that we've kind of learned in working with couples. And so we wanted to create a just sort of a simple format where we have conversations
Yep.
that, and then kind of sharing those with you. So anyway, that's kind of what's going on here.
Some stuff that we've heard, some stuff from our own experience as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
So kind of just getting in with a bunch of different avenues and
Yeah.
throwing it together. Okay. So one thing that I've seen is some people just don't have the same goal of where they're going with their marriage is not connected.
Yeah. Which a lot of that is kind of common sense because we come from very different families, and what we see and experience, oftentimes we will recreate, or we'll do the antithesis of, to try not to recreate, but without necessarily
Yeah.
talking
Yep.
that's what we're doing.
And so last time we used the word intentional. I think that's just a theme that you've got to be intentional. I think sometimes when these things are unspoken, which I'm going to get to in a second, they become conflicting.
Right.
And so basically I tell this story to couples that I work with. I said, sometimes I think if I took a couple down to a riverbank and they each had their own canoe, and I said, I want you to row to your ideal marriage destination. So they both get in their individual canoe and they start off, some couples would never see each other again. Like literally they would part at that moment and be gone. But the reality is you're actually only in one canoe.
Yes.
And so you've got two people rowing vigorously towards what they think is the ideal destination. And if you've ever seen a canoe where two people are not rowing together, that thing will do circles. I mean,
It'll rock back and forth, and it'll turn over.
it's a mess.
Yes.
And so the idea of us taking a moment and say, where is it that we're trying to get to? Like where what do you see? And this could be with finances. It's with careers. It's with parenting.
Goals.
Just life
Individual
goals.
and life goals. Also symbols and shared meaning, like what's symbolic. And not, some families don't really celebrate birthdays, or Valentine's not a big deal. And if you don't talk about that, that can cause some major offense.
Right.
Or the potential for that. So symbols in the relationship. What do you celebrate? What do you not?
Exactly.
What do certain things mean?
So the idea that you actually want to have a conversation around that, and I would say that marriages change over time, and sometimes
Absolutely.
even goals and thoughts. Like when you were maybe dating or early in your marriage, sometimes what we'll see is couples will have those kinds of conversations when they're dating, but then they don't update those conversations as time goes on.
Yes.
So
that
then,
happened to us.
where
Yes.
we had talked about something early on, and then
Yeah, well, so many things have changed in transition. Like jobs have changed in transition, and transitioned. Kids, of course, changed us as we're, aging and looking out for our health. I don't even know. I think we did have, a health conversation when we were dating. Like, do you think you can maintain your weight? Yeah, we can maintain, and then we didn't, and then. So I mean, there are just things and changing different churches for us and a bunch of different stuff. So we sat down one afternoon at a coffee date, maybe had 20 minutes, and we started going back and forth and trying to answer questions for each other. And we got stuck on like the first one.
yeah.
So there are things that just, they change. You more if your friends change, who is in and out of your life, and you do need to have moments to update conversation.
Yep. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about this unspoken thing.
Okay.
So when I grew up, we were in what would be considered an average sized church, but they were pretty small. But I can still kind of my vision of this small church, and there's two sides of the church in the center aisle, and in the middle of the service, they would say, anybody have any prayer requests?
Oh, yeah.
And so somebody would raise their hand, and they might say something about Aunt Susie needed something or whatever. But then many people would raise their hand and they would just say something like, well, I have an unspoken.
Special unspoken request.
And that's when it gets heavy. When it gets really heavy, it was a special unspoken. I've thought about that. Like now that I'm an adult, I look back and I go, special unspoken. Like, what?
What was that?
What in the world is that? It's basically, I don't know what it was. I don't trust any of you to share my business, whatever, but I somehow want to let you know that I need prayer. I'm telling you, special unspokens don't help.
No.
Like, we've got to identify, this is what I'm hoping will happen. Right. I once had a couple where literally as we uncovered it, so they were having constant conflict about their parenting.
Okay.
I mean, it was really rough. And sort of the details, without, sharing, was that she had needed to be emancipated very young. Okay, so she was kind of thrust into adulthood very young, and he had what he called an ideal childhood. Mm. And so her goal of parenting was to prepare their child to be able to survive on their own. So it was all about learning to cook, learning to clean, learning to do laundry, how to pay bills. I mean, we're talking like your 7-year-old, right, needing to balance the checkbook. It was that kind of stress because that's where she was rowing. Uh-huh. Where he was trying to create, as he described it, the magic of his childhood. Well, she didn't have any magical childhood. So he would lay on the bed and read and kind of create these moments. Mm-hmm. And she had no idea where he was going. Mm-hmm. And so they were at constant conflict because he had never fully expressed, this is what that looked like. Mm-hmm. Because, like he would be trying to get his wife to join them in the fun, and she was looking at it like their dishes to be done. Right. And so they were having conflict because they had never uncovered what it is. And in that case, both of those are great. Mm-hmm. Well, it's not like one is right and one's wrong. Right. It's just a different.
Right. But having the conversation that gets you there instead of the assumptions. Yeah. And yeah.
And so basically, I think a lot of people struggle when they don't identify what it is that they really are wanting. So they're getting into that, I have a special unspoken type of a habit. Mm-hmm. And I don't know.
Right. Well, it definitely leads to disconnection. I believe it plants seeds for like resentment to begin to build up, and a little bit of bitterness of why can't you see what I'm doing? And even us, which we're pretty conflict avoidant, we're pretty chill. However, there was an issue so it took us 17 years before we got to a place that is not an issue anymore. But it's not, we didn't stop the conversation and just say it's unspoken. I didn't know how to articulate my side so that he could clearly understand. And we finally got to a point almost 3 years ago where I was like, when this happens, I go to a dark place where I begin to doubt if you care as much about our family and our home as I care. And at that moment, he's like, oh, I get that. Right. So, and that's not on his radar because that particular household chore doesn't do that for him. Right. But it's something along the lines of maintaining our house and the chores and, dividing up and everything. And there is always a deeper thing. And honestly, that one took me going and spending 2 weeks with my parents in their retirement home and watching my mom and dad interact. They weren't in a retirement home. They were in their retirement location.
Living in a home.
Okay, let's just make it. They were in Hawaii. There is no it was in Hawaii. They were doing well. But staying with them for 2 weeks and watching my parents interact and being with them for that length of time after not living at home for over 17 years. And I saw what I had an expectation because that's the way my parents have always done it and operated, and that had not been clearly communicated to him. And that was a breakthrough moment because in that particular chore, I don't think you've let me down once. Right. In almost 3 years.
17 years of hard labor. No, but I think that's the reality, is that many times it's simply, we've got to just share.
Yeah.
This is what I was hoping for. And this idea that you should know what I want. I hear this all the time. You should just know. If you really loved me, you would know.
Right.
I am telling you that
Right.
I've been doing this a while.
You don't just know.
You don't just know. In fact, people get really frustrated because they guess and they create what they think is going to be the right thing.
Or the one I hear is, well, we've had this conversation before. I told you this before, and the other person doesn't remember. And that's kind of where we were at in the second. I know we've brought it up in 17 years, but I hadn't connected it in a way. And that's where these perpetual things that continue to come up that you're finding conflict around, if you stop talking about them because you don't want to rock the boat, or you just give up on it, or you just decide to be angry and in conflict, then guess what? That's what you're going to get, and it will cause more distance. But you've got to find ways to open up that conversation again and get yourselves unstuck, to get to a place. And just to assume that he doesn't love me because he never heard about me and my issues, is wrong. Or to assume or expect him to read my mind or know exactly because we've been together.
Yeah. And I know this is it can be really a frustrating topic, because what you just said about, well, we've brought this up before. That is a difficult one, because sometimes people have genuinely brought this up before.
Yes.
But there could be a lot of other circumstances around that, which is why we weren't able to hear it before. So if you have a situation like that, sometimes getting a third party involved, like a counselor, may be the solution, because it's like we need to have this conversation in a productive way. Like we've so scripted out our way of talking about this that it's almost like I could have both sides of the conversation.
Right.
And that, so sometimes you just got to get unstuck and go off road, and take a new path. And maybe you need a little guidance on that.
Yes.
I mean, that can
That's
happen. Okay, so just to sum up.
Yep.
Say what you want. I think that's the...
Yeah, say what it is you want. Say your expectations.
Yep.
And not in a demanding way. It's putting it out there and then inviting the other information too, because you are in the same canoe.
Yes, you are. And it takes some vulnerability to do that.
Yes.
I think that's another thing, is to share. So I think I'm going to take an extra minute and weave into this, that what happens, when a person actually, so let's say they're having tough times.
Okay.
And so when they're having tough times, they've stopped asking each other for the really juicy stuff, because they've basically given up on that.
Mm-hmm.
And now, so I mean, a couple may not be being intimate, right? They may not be spending much time together and things, but they ask for something, and then the other party goes, "Oh, that's silly."
Mm-hmm. Or it gets criticized.
Yeah, kind of, or that's not that important. That's not what he really needs, or she really needs. And I would just say, be careful about you being the evaluator of your partner's needs.
Yes.
I think sometimes people rule as judge and jury over another person's needs. I think that can be dangerous.
Yes. Yes.
So.
And to know what it is that you need that takes some self-reflection. I mean, because what comes out of your mouth may not actually meet whatever the emotional need is. And so I will often tell couples or a person to go with the self-disclosure route about what's, I'm just kind of feeling icky. I'm not 100% certain, but I want to feel closer to you.
Right.
But as opposed to, I need us to spend more time together. I need you to plan a date because I don't feel like you do enough. That kind of thing. I feel like I'm the one that always plans the dates or does this or gets the child care or whatever. I need a date where you plan, and a lot of that can actually be the opposite of what you want. So just kind of going in with, we call it self-disclosure, You're being vulnerable with what it is you need. But yeah, don't leave it up to chance.
Don't leave it up to chance.
Yeah.
Good deal. All right, we'll see you again next time.